Good morning. Yet another crisis in the government of Victoria. And to bring us up to date, I have Harvey Oberfeld, our man at the Legislature. Harvey, tell me right off the top, is it correct that Frank Howard, the NDP House Leader, has actually cabled Nathan Lemets, the Chief Justice of the Court of Appeal of British Columbia, to seal physically the offices of Garde Gardom, former Attorney General, Alan Williams, and Deputy Attorney General Dick Vogel?
Well, not only is that correct, Jack, but what he's also asked for is for RCMP officers to be placed in their offices to make sure that nobody touches any documents that are inside.
This, I presume, is because of the allegations reported yesterday that Deputy Attorney General Dick Vogel has in some way interfered with the administration of justice in 3 cases.
That's right.
2 driving offences and the Wendy King case.
That's right, and of course we know that Vogel just only a week ago was sort of knocked on the knuckles for involvement in another case, and at that time Mr. Williams said that he had full faith in Mr. Vogel and would stand behind him. It'll be very interesting to see what Mr. Williams does now, even though we only have allegations at this point. How Williams handles it could be the key to his own political future.
This is bound to bring up on the floor of the House, too, the handling of the Ritchie investigation, which recommended no charge be made.
That's right. There is a small problem today for the opposition in the House. There is no question period on Fridays. We are into the throne speech debate. I'm sure that the opposition will be wondering today whether to try to bring up something in the throne speech debate or whether they'll wait until Monday and then tackle the government during question period.
Harvey, I want to talk to you about what's been described as a bunch of thugs at a cockfight, behaviour of members apparently of both sides of the House in the corridor, and I want your report on in the House and out the House on the debate of non-confidence in the government after the break. The debate in the British Columbia Legislature last week was largely on the non-confidence motion put by the NDP against the Social Credit government. By all accounts, there was more reporting and action on the near scuffles in the hallway than there was in the debate in the Legislature. This, of course, all centres around the dirty tricks. Harvey, I want your opinion. Who won, who lost? Or did they all look abominably bad by week's end?
I think the people of British Columbia lost, if you want to be very frank about it. I called it, somebody asked me what I thought of it, and I said it looked like a male menopausal version of West Side Story. What was happening in the hallway, it was like teenage gangs, but instead of wearing leather jackets, they were wearing striped suits and ties. And
it came close to violence at one time, didn't it?
Yes, at one point it looked like Frank Howard and Rafe Mair could square off. And one of the things that people have been saying is that the scuffle in the hall the night before last resulted from something that Barber had said inside the House. But in an interview we did with Mr. Mair before the session started that day, he was already pretty upset at the NDP's attack on the government on dirty tricks on Lettergate, and at that time he threatened to retaliate politically, at least inside the House, if the NDP didn't continued in that same vein.
What I want to know from was the NDP's attack on the Lettergate issues, was it apparently effective on the floor of the House? Did Premier Bennett sit through it? Did he respond to it at all himself as the leader of the government?
No, he didn't respond personally. What happens in the throne speech debate during the legislative sitting is that everybody is in the House for the opening, for the question period, and then they start to trickle out because the speeches are about a half hour each, and nobody really sits through the entire thing. That's probably one of the reasons that they don't want television in the House, is that people would see all the empty seats. So the debate was unfolding no more unusually than it has in the past, but this year, of course, the NDP with the dirty tricks in Lettergate, they have a lot more that's very sensitive material for the government. It's not a matter of just attacking government policies or programs. This time they were getting right to the raw nerve, and of course it struck a raw nerve with Mr. Mair.
How did Mair behave in the House? How did Howard? How did Barrett? Tell me how they did it. Did the NDP present their case logically based on information, or were they merely going after Bennett and his government all the way?
Well, basically the NDP was concentrating on criticizing Mr. Bennett and the lack of leadership that he has provided according to
You mean
their...
about the caucus fights, about the caucus firings?
The caucus firings, Lettergate, failing to deal with it strongly. The non-confidence motion was against the government, but right from the start the NDP said that really they wanted to talk about the Premier and his lack of leadership, but according to the House rules, they couldn't bring a non-confidence motion at this point against the Premier himself, so they had to bring it officially against the government. But it was quite apparent it was Bennett they were trying to rake over the coals.
How about Gracie and the finger?
They did. That's what started the whole thing. Of course, Charles Barber in the House started talking about the Eckhart report and accused the government of gerrymandering. The interesting thing is that the NDP, in their attack on the government, has really brought out nothing new. Some of us have been very disappointed to see that they've basically been rehashing newspaper clippings and television reports as they have in the past, but at least this time they have been hitting the nerve, and the Rafe Mair sat there during the debate, sometimes swiveling in his chair with his back to the opposition, but it was quite apparent it was upsetting him. He was muttering under his breath. He was calling across the floor various interjections, and of course, he finally blew up, and we had the bizarre scene we saw it in the corridors.
How bizarre was it, really?
Well, it was...
I've seen many an argument, but normally when they come out of the House, they'll smile and walk by. They may not be talking, but you seldom get confrontations like we've seen this week.
Well, it really seemed to me that somebody had stuck a needle in Mr. Mair at a very inopportune
Would you say Mair was Mair to blame for it, or was Howard just as much to blame as Mair? He looked pretty aggressive on it.
Well, you know, it's like being a judge in a fight.
Be a judge.
Well, I would say that in this case, the heat of the moment got to Mr. Mair, and he exploded a little more than he usually does. Now, he's a very volatile person, as you know, and but I think in this time, once he used the foul language that he did, and then Mr. Howard tried to interject, and again, Mr. Howard was doing things that you don't usually do when somebody's doing an interview out in the hallway.
Okay, was any business done this week at all by the government of Victoria, or did you not expect any business, just this catcalling and fighting?
When any business is done at all, we're usually quite surprised, but this week there was something that will have very important implications, and that was the establishment of the committee, or the agreement to establish a committee to look into the wiretapping of Jim Nielsen's office or his phones. And once that committee sits, they're going to have 8 members on it, and they're going to have the power to call witnesses, to summon people, and that committee, when it recommends its findings to the legislature, could have nationwide implications for wiretapping of MLAs. But of course, it's all been lost in the shuffle because everybody's so interested in the Mair-Howard confrontation, and then last night we had a Howard-McClellan confrontation, and now we have the controversy about Vogel. So the true debate is really lost on most people.
Let me get this clear. Nielsen got up on a point of privilege and said, I want a committee of the House, I want the Speaker to rule whether or not the bugging of my office, he's here, there, and everywhere, can be investigated as a breach of privilege. Is that correct?
That's right.
And the Speaker ruled?
The Speaker ruled that, yes, there was, at least on the face of it, enough information to warrant the establishment of a committee to look into it. The Speaker did not make any value judgments on what the committee, of course, will find. He just basically opened the way for the creation of that committee.
Does that mean that that committee will be called for sure this session? Because you and I know that there are many committees that are seldom if ever called.
Well, generally speaking, most committees really just give the opposition an opportunity to criticize the government and take cracks at the government, so they're very reluctant to call them. In this case, you have a government cabinet minister who's involved, who's angry, and you also have things involved that could affect all MLAs. So I expect that this committee, we will see it in action, and it'll be quite an interesting committee to watch. 2
things before we finish. One, you're expecting a reaction from Alan Williams, the Attorney General, today on the NDP telegram to the Chief Justice to seal the offices and put the Mounties in them, one. Secondly, what's the latest on the Proluption report, which is the investigation by the lawyer into the allegations about the gerrymandering?
Well, the second reflects on the first. I've learned a long time ago, don't hold your breath when you're waiting for Alan Williams to make a strong statement on anything. We haven't heard from the Proluption report yet. We haven't seen it.
It's on its 4th draft now.
I don't know how many drafts it's gone through.
4.
But we also haven't got the report yet on election expenses, the amendments to the SOCRED return. I think you won't see very much out of Williams today, perhaps a comment that he'll look into it, and I think it'll be quite a while before the government decides its strategy on that
Have
matter.
a quiet week next week, Harvey.
Well, let's hope so.
Thanks, Harvey Oberfeld, our man in Victoria. Next, we're going to have an unhappy member of the BC Ferry and Marine Workers Union, a man by the name of Matt Brown, who recently resigned, and find out from his point of view what's going inside this vital union for British Columbia after the break. He's no bad at it.
Oh, lipstick? That's all the ass says, Jack.
You've got on a different colour. She's got on a different colour lipstick. Another ashtray, please. The BC Ferry and Marine Workers Union is going through what a number of people think is a fair crisis one way and another. And this crisis seems to have come about because of a situation in the union whereby it was necessary to bring in an official of the Canadian Labour Congress, Matt Brown, a very outspoken business agent of the union, resigned. When and why? Oh, just he resigned. And he's going to run to take, what's her name, Shelley Matheson's job. Now, is there real trouble in this union executive? Are you merely a malcontent who resigned and of whom they are now happily rid of, Matt Brown?
Well, that's one point of view, Jack.
Well, I'm just putting it to you bluntly so you can tell me what the situation is. Are you going to run for president of the union against Matheson?
If eventually the union gets into convention, yes, I will challenge the leadership.
Why did you resign as business agent? At that particular time in February or thereabouts, because you expected a convention to be held right away at which you could challenge it instantly?
The reasons why I resigned personally are vast. But the primary reason is, of course, that I could no longer function effectively within that union. For one reason, the reason that the duties of the president had significantly changed from the last convention, and which, in my opinion, was contrary to the wishes of that convention.
You are now in a position to tell me what the troubles were that caused the CLC to be approached, I do believe, to bring in Bill Smalley to kind of, is he a trustee overall the whole BC Ferry and Marine Workers Union now in the classic Kraft manner?
It's not a full trusteeship, it's a quasi-trusteeship in which I suspect Bill is in as an advisor.
Why did this come about? Most unusual for a CLC union to put one of their top guys in to keep their eye on a subsidiary organisation.
The actual request came from the BC Ferry and Marine Workers Union.
Why? You must know why. Tell me.
Basically because I guess the executive at that time had begun to polarize. So there was a resolution passed at the executive meeting to throw the union into trusteeship. And what was unique about the passage of that resolution, there was absolutely no debate on that resolution.
You've got 2,700 members in your union, and any time there's trouble in your union, that can lead to reverse militancy and strikes, which everybody hates on the coast. Smalley did a report, which I've got a copy of here, that one of the things wrong with your union was that it was top-heavy, with 22 executive members, far too many to represent 2,700 members, and that the membership wants to go back to a referendum ballot for election of table officers in union local office. And furthermore, people like yourself were very sharply criticised in putting forward what Smalley obviously felt was a number of invalid grievances, causing trouble for the Ferry Corporation and the union. Now, what do you say to that?
Well, some of Mr. Smalley's recommendations I can support in total. Some have confused me, and some have just bewildered me.
What about the one that I referred to specifically, that there are far too many invalid grievances put forward by business agents? Obviously, they're the ones that handle grievances.
That's one that really concerns me. Without appropriate documentation, why that point of view was entered. What that implies...
before Smalley did.
Yeah, what that implies that the union has invalid grievances prepared for arbitration.
Has it?
Not to my knowledge.
What's your record on grievances in the union?
The union's record in arbitration at this point in time is almost 100%. But that implies to me that the union has invalid grievances prepared for arbitration. And that's a broad statement without documentation or specific grievances that could be considered invalid.
I'm a little bit baffled.
That one really concerns me.
Do you think you've got much support among the membership? You, Matt Brown.
That would be decided by the membership only through a referendum ballot.
You're not going to tell me? Are you not going to tell me? See, because you...
Obviously, if I've challenged the leadership, I am of the opinion that I have the support of the membership.
Well, I want to know what's wrong with the present top-heavy executive. 5 of you quit, right?
Correct.
Why did you quit? And did you quit before the support came out criticising you?
Yeah, that was an unusual scenario of events.
Give me the scenario. Smalley was appointed.
Correct.
Who was the guy that quit before you? What was his name again? Les Neal. And then you quit one morning and the next afternoon the support comes out.
Correct.
That left you holding a bag.
Left me holding a bag.
Yeah. Was there plans for a convention to elect a new president this year?
There's been many plans, many groups. There was even a committee called the Committee for a Special Convention to organise a convention in which they've almost, the last count I had was almost 700 signatures on that sheet.
Well, I had the report this morning that there will be a special constitutional convention this year, but no convention for election of officers. Do you know if that's true?
It's news to me, Jack.
News to you. But if there is only a constitutional convention this morning, there's no way you can run, so you're out in the cold and you've lost your base until a election for a convention for elections comes up maybe the year after.
Unless the convention agrees that that's a convention to elect candidates.
How many of you quit at this time? Why did you quit, by the way? Because of the appointment of Smalley?
No.
Can you tell me?
My reasons are vast. The principal reason, of course, is that, as I'd outlined, I could no longer function effectively.
Because of?
Because of the change in duties of the president, which in my opinion is contrary to the wishes of the convention.
What's she doing she shouldn't be doing in your view?
The incumbent president is administering the day-to-day affairs of the union.
Who should be doing it?
My understanding, that should be done by business agents. And the convention turned down the proposition for a full-time president.
You're saying the wishes of membership are not being followed?
The wishes of the convention are not being followed.
Right,
right now, and I'm quite sure the membership is not aware that the union has a full-time president.
Tell me this, it's view of the criticism of all business agents, and probably especially yourself, of invalid grievances. Did Smalley ever talk to you before he wrote this report?
There was no discussion between me and Bill Smalley on that report.
Was there any investigation that you knew about the inefficiency of business agents?
Not to my knowledge.
Bit of a problem, isn't it?
That's it, it's a big problem.
I want to ask you about wildcat strikes and all the problems you had with the Labour Board out at Departure Bay and Horseshoe Bay after the break. Matt Brown, who resigned as a business agent. Were you the senior business agent of the Ferry Marine Workers?
There was no specific title, senior business agent. 3 business agents with the same title, business agents.
But you're setting yourself up to put Matheson out of a job if she runs again.
Oh, I'll challenge the president.
Now, you were saying that the president is carrying out duties which you don't believe should be carried out by the president as against the constitutional wish of the union. What do you mean by that?
Well, there is a weakness in the Constitution as to who administers the day-to-day affairs of the union. And it was clearly understood at the last convention that the union would not support a full-time president. So it was logical that the day-to-day administrations of the union would be done by business agents. But since the last convention, the duties of the President have changed significantly. And we now have a full-time President to the degree that even correspondence by business agents to the corporation is responded to the President. In
Well,
essence, if I write a letter to the corporation, the response is directed back to the President.
Listen to this. I'm going to read this to you. In the more than 2 months Smalley had been investigating the internal problems of the unions, it had been brought to his attention by table officers, executive members, and rank-and-file members that a serious lack of confidence existed in your continued employment. If it's going to continue to function, he says, that they terminate the employment of Matt Brown as business agent of the union and be paid 1 month's pay in lieu of notice. Was that passed by the executive?
That resolution became redundant because previously I had placed my resignation.
Did you quit because you knew that was coming?
No.
No way.
Totally unaware of that last recommendation. If I had been aware of that recommendation, maybe I took a different approach.
You wouldn't have quit?
Of course not.
Are you regarded, Matt, as a militant?
A militant.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, you see, the first call we might get if we take calls this morning is that you've got a Scottish accent and all these troublemakers come from Scotland and England.
I'm militant in certain issues and placid in other issues. It depends on the issue, how militant.
Have you supported all the strikes that the Ferry has been involved in, including the Wildcats at Departure Bay and Horseshoe Bay?
Have I supported them?
Yeah.
Well, I supported the 2 legal strikes, in which I've been involved in.
The 2 legal strikes,
Right.
but not the illegal strikes.
No.
Because it seemed to me that there was an awful caper in which the public lost a fair amount of confidence in the union leadership over the Peacock, Thornhill, and the other one over at Departure Bay. Although Peacock and Thornhill were cleared of it, weren't they?
Correct.
In front of the Labour Relations Board.
Correct.
And that surprised everybody in the country, didn't it?
It certainly did.
Should they have been cleared on it?
Of course they should have been cleared.
They weren't the guilty people at all.
No.
Is there any need for wildcat strikes? Does that not indicate a lack of the executive's control of the union?
Depends on what initiates the wildcat strike. You have to examine what initiates the wildcat strike. It could be a combination of things why that wildcat strike initiates.
There's one good recommendation in Smalley's report here, maybe you'll tell me it's not, that the vast majority of the 2,700 members want to go back to a referendum ballot for election of table officers in local unions. Have you not had that in recent years? That's the first page.
Referendum ballots.
For elections. I thought you'd always have had that, wouldn't you? But apparently you didn't.
4 years ago, that was a process in which we elected table officers, referendum ballot.
It was. Tell you what I'm going to do. Because, you know, if Shirley wants to come on, Shirley can come on, or if Smalley wants to come on, Smalley can come on. But you're a fairly influential person in this area. I'm going to try one segment of calls from ferry workers. Ferry workers. Ferry workers. Whether they're for or against Brown after the break. I feel like I'm trying to whip up trouble in the BC Ferry Marine Workers Union this morning, but I'm not. It's a very important union. Matt Brown resigned. Then the executive come out with the Smalley comes out with a recommendation saying that he should be terminated. And you didn't know about that.
Certainly not.
Do you think it was sandbagged?
That's one point of view.
I've asked for ferry workers. I want to stick to ferry workers to see if we can whip up a storm on Brown. Go ahead from Comox. Where are you in Comox?
Oh, good morning, Jack. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning.
What do you make of them?
How are you getting on, Matt?
Make your point, will you?
Not too bad.
I think Matt knows who's talking. No, I'm 100% in favor of Matt Brown.
Why?
Well, he's a good man.
What's wrong with the other people?
Ask Matt a few more questions, he can tell you.
Okay, that's all you've got to say. Go ahead, please. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Against.
You're against them. Why?
If they're out for their own welfare and not the part of the workers.
Are you one of the members of the union?
That's right.
1 and 1. One for you, one against you. We won't not get that many calls from ferry workers by themselves that I can run a poll on it. If I asked the public to tell me what they think of the BC Ferry and Marine Workers Union, the board would be jammed in 2 minutes. They might just do that. Go ahead, please.
Yes, this is to Matt Brown. I was wondering, did you quit your job in Dees Dock to become a business agent for the union? And if you did or didn't, what job will you return to?
I will return to my job at Dees Dock.
So you did quit there when you were appointed a business agent for the union?
I was on leave of absence from the corporation.
Okay, anything else, ma'am?
Yeah, I just thought that you had to work for the corporation to run for the presidency.
I will be working for the corporation.
Yeah, you'll go back to Dees Dock.
Correct.
As a fitter.
Right.
Fair enough?
No, thank you.
Not fair enough. Go ahead, please. Hold on, please. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Where's this from? Departure Bay.
I'm a Group 3 casual in Departure Bay.
Uh-huh.
I was talking to Matt the other day, and I think you'll find that part of the reason Bill Smallers reports that the membership, at least in Departure Bay, did not consider him to be worthwhile is because we were led to believe by Shirley Matheson that he had not shown up for the signing of the contract and that he should have been there. And I was given to believe that they knew he wasn't going to come and that Shirley actually lied to us.
Well, I don't know if Shirley lied or not, but what about turning up for the contract?
Everyone knew I would not be there for the signing of the agreement. It was a ceremony, a simple ceremony of signing the agreement. I had a doctor's appointment that day, and everyone knew that I wouldn't be there for the signing of the collective agreement.
So that's not an issue at all, is it, Shirley?
Well, what the callers tried to impress that Matheson had indicated that I refuse.
And you didn't refuse?
No.
You'd have been there if you hadn't had a doctor's appointment that day. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, from Salt Spring Island.
Yes, yes.
I'd just like to say that the people from Salt Spring over here are about fed up with the whole thing, I think. I'd like to just put my little vote in there and say we're against Matt Brown totally. I don't think he's done the job that he was hired to do. I'm glad to see him gone.
This is one of the Salt Springs Fusiliers, roughly speaking. I don't know which particular person it is, but there's another friend you found.
Mm-hmm. I recognize the voice.
Have you anything to say to him?
No.
Nothing to say. Have you anything else to say?
Not unless he's got a specific problem in which I did not address.
Anything else to say?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Much obliged. But what about this business of the licensed officers and the ferry officers? And for matter of fact, I should have asked you about that before. Is the BC Ferry and Marine Workers a part of the BC GEU, Friars organisation?
Only through an affiliation.
Do you pay per capita to them?
We pay $1.25 per capita to the BCGU.
A year or a month?
Per member, per month.
Per member per month?
Mm-hmm.
Just a minute, that's 2,700 times $1.25. That's about 40,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Does the BCGEU do anything for you?
Yeah, I have some resources which we have access to.
What is the are there any recommendations in the Smalley report about the positions of licensed personnel?
Well, he's recommending a two-component structure under the BCGU.
You mean separate certification or separate structure for the licensed personnel?
Under the BCGU's umbrella.
Do you agree with that?
I could never support that.
Do you think that the officers and the men should be in the same union? Which they are now,
No,
except for the skippers?
I think there has to be a separation of the unlicensed and the licensed.
In the same union?
No, I think it has to be done through a dual certification, with the Merchant Service Guild picking up the certification for the licensed employees.
The Merchant Service Guild should be the agents for the officers, and it should be two
I
separate
think if one
contracts.
took a consensus of the licensed employees, you would come up with 85% licensed employees would prefer to be back in the Guild.
No doubt about
That's
that.
the desire.
Because ship's officers, by and large, are basically a wee bit snobbish anyway, and they don't like being in the same union with men whom they occasionally have to discipline at sea.
The gap is wide.
Yeah, I never could never understand that one myself. Go ahead, please. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, yes, speak up.
Yeah, it's Lloyd Thornhill, Jack.
Well, hello, Lloyd,
How are you this one?
the man from Horseshoe Bay. Were you up in front of the Labour Board, or was it just Peacock?
No, I was there, Robin Holmgren and Bob Peacock.
And you walked away scot-free, didn't you? Clean.
Well, they made an error on mine. They suspended me for 3 days and lifted it, so they couldn't really charge me again, I don't believe.
Oh, I see. Should you have been charged again?
I don't think so.
Are you a friend or enemy of Brown's?
I'm a personal friend of Matt Brown's, yes. But I want to make a few comments.
Make them now, please.
Yeah, that he missed, you asked why the trustee was called in, and I believe that was done to avert our petitions for a special convention. Because at that meeting, the convention, special convention was supposed to be on the agenda, but they averted that by passing a resolution to bring the trustee in.
Is that right? Matt?
That's speculation.
Okay, next point.
Yeah, the wildcat strike. You asked why these wildcat strikes continue, and I believe the particular one that took place in Departure Bay and Horseshoe Bay was brought on by a complete lack of communication from the bargaining committee.
The bargaining committee.
They weren't keeping the membership informed of what was going on a fairly reasonable basis, and it just came to a grind.
What do you say to that? Were you on the bargaining committee?
I was chief spokesman on the bargaining committee, and I'd have to support the argument that the communications at that point in time was very low between the bargaining committee and the membership.
You were in charge
Which was
of it.
causing frustration.
Well, you were in charge of it. You were the chief spokesman.
Not in charge of communications, though.
Oh, I see.
Could I comment on that too, Jack? I was on the bargaining committee before they threw me off, but Matt certainly wasn't in charge of the committee because a couple of times while I was there, Andy McKechnie asked for his resignation. Andy was the first vice president, and I certainly felt that we couldn't bargain under that climate. So I was glad when they threw me off it.
Anyway, you're disappointed there'll be no elections at the special convention, which is apparently going to be held this spring.
Well, I don't think there is going to be a convention. It was overturned yesterday. They can't get their act together at those executive meetings. Last week they passed a resolution almost unanimously to call a convention. Yesterday they overturned it 18-2.
Why would that be, Matt? You weren't there.
That surprises me.
Anything else, Lloyd? Short and sharp?
Well, the reason on that is that I think that they figured they got rid of all the dissident elements so they can continue to function now. But I doubt very much if they can run the union on a day-to-day basis.
Thanks, Lloyd. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just want to put in a good plug for Matt. I've known him from day one. I was in the union from inception of the union since 1966, and in my opinion, I think Matt is very well qualified for the job.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'll give a vote for Matt. You were talking about the licensed going off to
Merchant Service Guild.
or to the Merchant Service Guild. I think Matt is right. Hopefully his estimate is a little bit low. There's a good 85, maybe 90% or higher that are ready to break away completely from this union.
But you got to remember that Paul Weiler was the guy that put them all in one big union so that the Ferry Authority couldn't be blackjacked with two separate contract dates in one period.
That's true, but other unions have managed to operate on a joint basis where they bargain at the same time and they take their ballot at the same time, and it seems to work pretty good. A little bit of problems with the BC Rail, but still in all, over the whole matter, I think labor negotiations at BC Rail have really been good in the past few years.
You got to be joking.
Do the same thing.
BC Rail? You've got to be joking.
Well,
It's
they
a
have
disaster.
before they were when they were separate.
Yeah, they have an imposed joint council now. Thanks anyway. Go ahead from Langdale.
Yeah, hi.
Right. Go ahead.
Well, I talked to Matt Brown, yeah.
Right.
Right, Matt, it's Robin Allen, Langdale.
Hello, Robin.
How you doing?
Not too bad.
I've got a couple of questions, Matt. I'd like you to answer a few questions on Joan McKechnie, why she resigned. And the membership over are very concerned with this factor, the fact that she was secretary of the union and she resigned. You'd like to know why.
Can you speak for her?
No, I'm not speaking. I'm speaking for myself. From one of the membership of the Langdale terminal. There's a few other questions we want to ask, too.
Smalley says, in view of the fact that the executive decided to disband the Joan McKechnie inquiry, I would recommend that the internal inquiry committee be disbanded as well.
Yeah, well, we want to know why that was disbanded.
Do you know the answer to that, Matt?
I don't know why the committee was disbanded, but I know why John McKenty left the BC Ferry Marine Workers
Why?
Union. In my opinion, which is a damn good opinion, John McKenty was harassed out the union by the incumbent president.
Certainly harassed her.
completely harassed that girl out to union.
Maybe properly so. You can't blame a president for exerting her influence on what she thinks might have to be corrected.
The harassment came about a request by the employee for time off to attend to personal things.
Well,
There's a lot of difference between harassment and opinion, surely.
well, I wasn't there, I can't tell you. Matt, I'm going to let you go at that. Are you firmly committed to run for president of the union?
If I can force a leadership convention. The only way I can force a leadership convention now is to solicit the views of the membership.
Did my best for you this morning. I'll do the same for Shirley Matheson. Best of luck to both of you.
Okay, thanks, Jack.
My thanks. You'll never guess what we're going to do after this. Hey? You're making sounds after the break.
Matt,
Good.
Matt, where's he go? There's his light. He left his lighter.
Well, why not do it on the air? Guess who's on the telephone from Victoria right now, and I presume he saw the program this morning and has some complaint or point to make. The Honourable Rafe Mair.
Morning, Jack.
Just before you make that point, Rafe, though, not to distract you or cool you off, I did a shocking story the other morning about a 12-and-a-half-year-old boy kept drugged in a mattress on the floor of the youth detention centre for 9 weeks in December, January, February.
Yes?
And your man Bonham told me that you're finally going to build this 26-bed closed extension at the Maples, correct?
Yes, that's correct, Jack.
And it'll be ready in 2 years, correct?
It'll be ready in 2 years, right.
For the mentally sick and often sometimes psychotic youngsters who must be treated in a closed setting.
Yeah, we don't have too many of them, of course, but the ones that we do cause a great deal of problem, a great deal of anguish, and...
But there's one question I want to ask you.
Sure.
How come that was announced the day that I did the story? Or has it been announced a number of times over the past 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years?
Well, Jack, I think that there is a good deal of coincidence there. I was rather surprised you didn't do a story about 3 or 4 weeks earlier when the matter first came to our attention as being a very serious situation. The extension has been planned for some time, and I think that a lot of things just came together at one time, but we do have this particular...
Is it financed?
Is it financed?
Have you got money for it?
Yes, we've got money for it.
How much is it going to cost?
Oh, I'm not sure, Jack.
But you've got the money now?
Got the money now.
No further delays?
No further delay.
Because I've been doing stories on this for 20 years.
Yes, yeah,
Okay, sorry to distract you, but I'd like to attend to my own business too.
Oh, that's fine, Jack.
You are the man nailed as the principal causaire of the, described by one reporter as a as a bunch of thugs at a cockfight.
Well, Jack, we can talk about, my behavior, and I'm quite prepared to admit that I'm not particularly happy with all of the things I did. But before we get into that, and I know that you'll want to question me on that, I think that Harvey Oberfeld misrepresented the situation this morning. I'm sure unwittingly, although Harvey was in my office yesterday when I told him and made it very clear what had got me upset in the House. And it had absolutely nothing whatever to do with Lettergate. There was no touching of a nerve on Lettergate or anything of that sort. As a matter of fact, I made a speech on Tuesday in the House where I, in essence, said to the NDP, go your best lick. We'll sit here and take our lumps. I did say to them, of course, that when you get on a lofty perch, it's sometimes a dangerous place to be on, but nevertheless, we'll take our lumps.
What was it that upset them?
What upset me, Jack, and upset me very much, and I think has upset not only our caucus, but a great many other people, was the vicious and unwarranted attack by Mr. King on Mr. Nielsen when he called upon Mr. Nielsen to resign because, of all things, the RCMP were bugging him in order to catch Murphy and Home. And he was called upon to withdraw and all the rest of it and simply would not do so. And quite frankly, Jack, I got very annoyed at that. I don't mind telling you, I thought that was a disgraceful attack, totally unwarranted. And totally...
Let me get that clear, just so I don't misunderstand it. You're telling me that Bill King got up in the House and said that Nielsen, who has apparently asked for a special committee which has been given to look into breach of his privileges, that Nielsen should resign because his phone was bugged.
That's correct, Jack. And, this was just, as a matter of fact, it was a startling thing because I don't think I have to tell you that Bill King, regardless of the fact that most of us on our side, all of us on our side of the House disagree with him, has always been held in very high regard. And while I would expect other people in the House to perhaps get down a little lower than they ought to do so, never Bill. Bill has always been on a rather lofty plane. And for him to come down to this was just infuriating. Now, if he had stood up and said, well, I'm off base, and I'm sorry, and I shouldn't have said that, and it was the heat of the moment, I suppose we all could have said, well, that's fine. But he persisted in it over and over again, including calling upon Mr. Nielsen to resign. Now, you know, I've been under attack, Jack. I know what it's like, and you simply can't defend yourself. And I defended Jim as best I could. Admittedly, it was out of order. I was doing it across the House, but I was pretty angry, and I defended him. And I was interviewed by BCTV in between that and the incident later on that night where I made that clear. I also might say, Jack, I was interviewed by Clem Chappell yesterday on BCTV where I made it clear again that that's what caused me to be concerned. And I'm told, although I didn't see your news last night, I'm told that that wasn't shown either.
That's the point you wanted to make, that you lost your temper because of the unfair attack on Nielsen, you reckon, by Bill King.
Nothing whatever to do with so-called...
Fair enough.
Nothing to do with dirty tricks.
Okay, you've got your equal time. There's no doubt about that now, all around the province of BC and up in the Arctic Circle.
Okay, Jack.
Next point.
I just wanted...
Next point.
Sorry?
Next point.
Yeah, the only other point I wanted to...
No, my point to you.
Oh, sure.
Are you prepared to apologize for your behavior in the hallways? I mean, what an example to set the kids throughout the province watching television.
Well, I think that the phrase I used to Alec MacDonald is something that I should apologize for.
Don't repeat it on television.
I'm sorry?
Don't repeat it on television.
No, I shan't do that. But, you know, I can only say in my defense, I won't defend myself on the grounds that I was angry, but I did not know that there were any radios on at that time. Now, later on, I have nothing to apologize for. Mr. Howard pushed me and later on said he wanted to punch me. And I'm going to tell you, Jack, not only am I a coward, but I think it would be disgraceful for anybody to get into a fist fight, and you'll never, ever see me doing that. But so I have nothing to apologize there. I was...
Okay, thanks, Rafe. What comment have you got to make on the allegations against the Deputy Attorney General, Mr. Vogel?
Of course none, Jack. I want to see what the Attorney General has to say, and I'll be going up to caucus in 2 minutes' time. Thanks for giving me a chance at an equal shot.
No bother. Next I'm going to give birth after this break. I don't like midwives, and I'll tell you why I don't like midwives. When I was a very small boy, this must have been around 1921, 22, 24, my mother kept having babies, and the midwife would come in, and she'd be a big, brawny, brutal creature who would terrify Brother Sandy and myself and slap us about, get out of the way, go wash the dishes, you know. So obviously I've got hung up about midwives. But I was fascinated, or somebody on my staff was fascinated, to see that midwives in British Columbia are pushing for recognition. And I have a midwife here, Karen May, and I have a customer here. Oh, first name, Louise Mangan. I trust you're not about to do any midwifery here today, are you?
Not unless you're expecting that.
Are you a British? No, well, I only look like it. Tell me, are you a British trained midwife?
Yes, I am.
Give me the story. Give me the shot.
Well,
give me your pitch.
I had my first baby here in Burnaby in a hospital. I was an occupational therapist at the time. It got me interested in birth and the whole process. Shortly after that, I took my infant son and went to England and did the 2-year training there. And came back to Canada, and I'm a midwife now here.
You're a midwife qualified by
qualified by England,
under the
yes.
British English standards.
State certified midwife.
Are midwives allowed to operate in this country?
Not legally, no. We don't think so. It's never been actually tested.
I mean, if somebody's going to have a baby in an emergency, anybody else can help deliver the baby.
That's right.
Now,
but if you make a habit of it, there may be a question.
How many are there of midwives that you know of in this new push for recognition, to steal the newspaper headline that you have on right now?
We had a conference on the weekend, and 300 people attended. The conference was called Midwifery is a Labor of Love. Approximately 300 people attended, of which I would say better than half were midwives either trained abroad or lay trained themselves.
What are your plans? What are you going to do for recognition? Just go on a publicity junket kind of thing?
Well, we decided to do 3 things out of the conference. The publicity, of course, is one thing that we are doing. We have started a petition, which is circulating around the province right now, to inform Rafe Mair, the Minister of Health.
I could have told him about it.
We thought about that. Maybe he's still listening. That the people of British Columbia want alternatives in childbirth, and that one way to get those alternatives is to legalize the system of midwifery. That was one of the things that was decided. The second thing that was decided was that we got a mandate from the floor of the conference to set up a task force to study the whole issue of legalizing midwifery and to advise the Ministry of Health.
Any doctors on your side?
Yes, yes.
Put their names to it?
Well, we wouldn't like to put their names, but some of them are putting their names.
They are
yes.
putting their names to it.
Yes, there are some. And the third thing that came out of the conference was that the midwives want to form an association of BC midwives, so that will be happening in the near future also.
Now, you're here as a satisfied customer.
Yes, that's right.
Tell me about it. Many babies have you had? 8?
I've had 2.
2 babies.
The first baby I had was in the hospital. The second baby I had was at home with a midwife. And during the in-between period, I became involved in childbirth education, and I went from being an ordinary consumer to being what some people felt was a wild-eyed radical, largely because in that interim period, I accumulated a lot of intellectual understanding that there are also risks involved in hospital birth, and that what we have is an exchange of risks. So that by the time I had my second baby, I felt very strongly that what I was doing was in fact the safest alternative for a normal, healthy childbirth.
Pretty smart, because I was just about to say to you that during the 60s in British Columbia, there were a number of so-called natural births which took place in teepees and shacks and mud huts and whatnot throughout British Columbia. You remember, maybe you're too young to have gone through that phase. Is it not essential the child be born in hospital to get these tests?
There aren't a lot of tests that are done routinely right at birth, Jack. The PKU, in fact, is not done until several days after birth because the protein level in the blood isn't high enough to test for phenylketonuria. In fact, there have been some important studies done that show that the place of birth is not actually what affects the safety. What affects the safety and improves the statistics is the quality of the attendance at the birth.
Oh, you know, I'm prepared
So
to
what
believe
we're
that. Of
talking
course,
about-
bad doctor, good doctor,
That's
bad
right. So
midwife,
what we're
good
talking
midwife.
about is quality care, and that means to us a legalized system of midwifery with a good system of education, good medical backup.
But there are births, says Webster, which are going to be complicated regardless. You can have breech births, you can have all
Of
kinds
course,
of problems.
of course.
These people would be done in hospitals.
Yes.
In
They're
other
very-
words, you would take advantage of all the X-ray techniques,
Of course.
and simple, straightforward births, assuredly without physical problem, could be done at home.
That's right.
That's right. So careful screening is really the answer.
Yeah, I remember we keep seeing on television this story where the baby is born in water and low lights and whatnot.
The Leboyer.
Yes.
Is a midwifery birth easier than a hospital birth?
I think it is. I think the difference is that a midwife-attended birth means that there's 100% support for the laboring woman and the family throughout the entire labor, and that's very difficult to duplicate in a hospital
What about
setting.
the stuff, you know?
Anesthesia.
Anesthesia.
It becomes much less required because the personal support of a woman during labor goes an awful long way to minimizing her need for analgesic and anesthesia.
I'm going to cop out of this, and you can talk to people on the phone. You don't need me for this, do you? You can
It's nice
answer
to
the
have you.
phone.
Sure, we can answer the phone.
This is, you know, in a way it's gone back to the Middle Ages. So we're also brainwashed by hospitals and doctors and the need for support.
One of the things that maybe your audience is not aware of is that 210 of the countries listed by the World Health Organization, only 9 of them do not, in fact, have a midwifery service. So, you know, maybe it's us that's out of step.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
in fact, those countries that do not have a midwifery service are not the well-established with the best statistics in the world. We keep the company at third
Where
world
do they have midwives in the States?
Yes, some of the states.
Some of the states do.
Do they have them in Britain? Yes, Scotland
Certainly.
and England and Ireland.
The Netherlands, Sweden, Finland, Denmark.
The countries with the best statistics in the world
France.
all incorporate midwifery
Midwifery.
systems.
Okay. I refuse to take further part in this conversation as a non-specialist, not involved, but Karen May and Louise Mangan will field your questions after the break. Special instructions for callers this morning. You should not see me on this segment at all if you'll do as I tell you. I'm only going to punch buttons, opening and closing lines. Louise and Karen will say, go ahead, please, respond to them.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, good morning. I've been a nurse for 20 years. I've been a midwife for over 10 years, and I want to say that I'm totally against the practice of midwifery in private homes, and I'd like to ask the two ladies concerned what they have in mind for doing in an unexpected emergency situation, and I'm sure the lady who is the midwife should know what some of those situations could be.
First of all, what I'd like to say is that as far as I'm concerned, the issue is not home birth. The issue is the legalization of midwifery. And I think that if a legalized system of midwifery is instituted in this province with careful training and careful regulation and careful standards, then we can open up the options about where people should give birth. Because parents want to give birth where they want to give birth. And I think as long as they are healthy and the pregnancy is normal, that they should have those options with good
Abnormal
care.
pregnancies, I'm sure you well know, have resulted in unexpected emergency situations at delivery. I have seen it many, many times. I've been a midwife for over 10 years, delivering in a hospital where a doctor is less than 2 minutes away. And I ask again, what would you people intend doing with an unexpected prolapsed cord, with an unexpected APH, with an unexpected impacted shoulder on a baby?
Of course, with a well-trained midwifery service, midwives, as you well know, are perfectly capable of taking care of obstetric emergencies.
What if they're in a home and they've got to wait for an ambulance to bowl up? And what if they've got to wait, you know...
Can I put it to you? You sound like you're trained in Britain.
No, I'm not trained in Britain. I'm trained in Australia, and we had very extensive training.
In Britain, where midwives do domiciliary work quite routinely, there is an excellent flying squad, an excellent backup emergency service, and of course, we should not have home births here without that kind of medical backup. Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack. Hello.
It's Louise here. Please ask your question.
Jack, I am a midwife, a nurse midwife, and I trained in the 30s in Dublin, which is called the Home of Midwifery. I'm in agreement with these young ladies. It could be done. Home midwifery could be done.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Hi. I know that you have to pretty well be with the person all during labor and the birth and everything. How much after birth or postnatal support or checking up do you do, or do you work with doctors on that?
Well, obviously, all over the world, the postnatal care varies. But here what we are attempting to do is to emulate the British model, which does a visit by a midwife every day for 10 days to do whatever follow-up care is necessary, to do all of the physical observations of the infant and the mother, to teach the mother about parent care, about parent craft or baby care, nursing the baby and that sort of thing.
Also, if you can get this legalized and set up, will it go through BC Medical if you can, or would you be referred by doctors to a midwife? How would you work that?
Well, at this point, we don't know. There are a number of alternatives that we are exploring, and the task force will be looking into those really carefully.
Go ahead, please.
I'd just like to say congratulations. I think what you're doing is a valuable service. I have had 3 children, and they were all born in hospital, and the last one was born in the labor bed without a doctor or a nurse in attendance. It was only my husband.
It happens.
This is surprisingly frequent, and we're all aware that women carry with them a collective grief and a collective joy about childbirth, and many women share experiences with hospital birth.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, good morning. I'd like to speak to the midwife, please.
I'm here.
Yes, I understand. I just wish to speak about mundane matters like money, you see. A midwife gets
Must be a doctor.
$10 extra a month.
Yes.
That's an RN takes her extra years training in obstetrics, and she gets $10 extra a month for this.
That's right.
So if she gives a year's work up at $15,000, after 150 years working, she will have recouped her outlay.
That's a very good point. I would say that nurse midwives in our situation here are being exploited a little bit.
Now, how much does a doctor forfeit if he is not present at the delivery of the baby? Let's suppose a case. The hospital is across the railroad tracks, and the doctor has got a call in, but the freight train crosses, and he's sitting, drumming his feet, waiting. In the meantime, the baby is born. How much does he lose for that 10 minutes work or hours work?
I'm not exactly certain, but I know that doctors, in fact, are not paid terribly well for attending pregnant women.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning. My name is Herb Taylor. The point that I am making in question is that I believe I just went through birth with my own son and my wife in the Richmond General, and I was very pleased in the way they handled it. And I don't think moving birth out of a sterile environment is a very good idea. If the woman hemorrhages or there is an abnormality in birth, which there's no way that you can possibly guarantee.
You must be aware, first of all, that hospital is anything but a sterile environment. There is no place that has a greater collection of infections and viruses than a hospital. It is definitely necessary and essential that some backup be available, as Karen pointed out, for women who do hemorrhage. For women healthy going into the hospital, there is actually some jeopardy in them entering that environment.
Yes, but still, you're getting back off the track. I, sitting there as a layman, I watched my wife hemorrhage, and I don't think I'd want to go through that at home.
No, nobody would like to go through it anywhere.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning. I'm totally in favor of these two girls and the whole setup. I feel the consumer should have a choice where they want to have their baby, and I have been making recent inquiries, and I've been quite shocked at the attitude of doctors. They just ignore the request. Various other people I phoned, and eventually I got in touch with someone who helped me, who gave me another phone number for another phone number, and it's like a secret society, and it's really not fair. I think it's extremely safe. I think 90-odd% of births are safe, normal, and the ones that are not normal are 90% screened beforehand anyway. So I really feel the choice should be available.
Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Hello.
I am a Dutch midwife.
Yes.
Studied in Amsterdam.
Yes.
Wonderful.
And they tell me that at the present in Holland, the midwives all work in the hospitals, just like the nurses do, and they deliver the babies. And if there is something, then there is a doctor that lives in who comes to the aid. But I used to work even in the Dutch East Indies, in the Chinese districts, and in the kampongs. I've done everything by myself, and there was no doctor whatsoever.
Yes. It is not true, by the way, that all births take place in the hospital in Holland, although...
38%.
How many? 38%. We just had Dr. Kloosterman here from Holland who was talking about the decline in the home confinement rate in Holland, which has been largely influenced by the North American style of birth. And it has not been influenced by poor statistics in the home.
In fact, 38% of births are still occurring in the home in Holland. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, okay, I just went through it with my wife.
Went through it?
And okay, she's 10 days old now, but I found that the hospital was absolutely excellent in every way, shape, and form, and they had nurses right there all the time. So I don't see how it could be possible for you to really help out, and in as clean an environment as it was in the hospital. And I know you said that the hospital was not as clean as we thought it was, but it is.
I'm glad that you called, and I'm glad that you were pleased with your hospital birth, and a lot of people are, but a lot of people are not, and I think that they have the right to options too.
Yeah, but you said that the service was often lacking in the hospital, and I saw no place where the service was lacking.
Okay, I don't think the service is lacking. I think the one-to-one attention is lacking, and it's impossible to provide the same kind of attention one-to-one in a hospital setting that a midwife can provide who has only one client to take care of.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, I just wanted to say that my mother-in-law was a midwife for a great many years, and she always took very good care of her patients. The thing that people don't realize is that with the patients stay in the hospital 3 or 4 days, then the mother comes home to an environment that may not have been really prepared for the baby and her. And when the baby is born at home, then everything is done to make sure that it is a fairly sterile situation. I really am wholeheartedly in agreement because of the fact that today when you go in to have a baby, it's kind of a nonchalant thing. And I know from my daughters having babies in the hospital that they don't receive the same care and attention as my mother-in-law gave to us when we delivered at home.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling. Karen and I will be back right after the break. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Karen May, and this is Louise Mangan, and we're back to talk a little bit more about midwifery. Yes.
Okay, yes. I had 5 children at home, and I wouldn't suggest that anybody have 5 children at home or 1 child at home, and that was on the prairies. And when my 5th baby was born, I had a doctor and a trained nurse, and I thought they were going to pull my insides out, and my womb was loosened from sparring, and I had to have it tied up afterwards.
Did you have some births with midwives?
No, we didn't have a midwife. We had a doctor.
All the 5?
A qualified doctor.
No, all 5, I mean?
All 5 children I had at home.
Uh-huh.
That was an ordinary thing on the prairie.
Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, Mr. Webster.
Yes, please go ahead.
And the girls. What I want to know is this. With midwifery, is it confined to the house delivery?
No. Hospitals, domiciliary midwifery is one place that midwifery can't take place. However, midwifery takes place in many situations in all the rest of the world, in hospitals, in maternity units, as well as at home.
Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm a little bit nervous, forgive me. I've got 5 living children, and my youngest, which is now 10, my oldest daughter, she was 8 at the time, helped deliver her. And I was wondering, it's bothering me because she's having her baby in August, her first one, and I was wondering if I did the right thing by letting her do this or not. I think I'm more fearful for her than she's showing no fear at this time.
I'm not surprised. I think that birth is a natural part of life, and your daughter is very fortunate that she was able to participate in your birth experience with you, and that's probably why she's not showing any fear now.
Because I didn't show any form of pain. All that I did was, the bearing down. That was about the only question she asked me, what were those noises.
I think your daughter is very blessed. Thanks for calling.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning. I'm all in agreement with you ladies. I am a little older than you are and have had 4 children. Every one of them was born at home. I had a midwife, and I couldn't have been better treated. They were absolutely fantastic. They looked after me the whole time I was pregnant. And at the birth, they were with me right through, and they encouraged me. It was just fantastic.
Where was this?
This was in England.
In England.
Yes.
Thank you.
I do have a grandson now, and my daughter had her baby in hospital. The doctor and the nurses were very, very good to her, but she didn't have the individual attention that I got.
Yes, I think we should emphasize that this is not a home birth versus hospital birth situation. What we're talking about, those people who are calling in and saying that they had wonderful hospital births, those are the people who got the personal care in the hospital that we are talking about making available to every woman. Now, what has happened is that with the emphasis on pathology, the personal support for a woman during labor has been de-emphasized, not because it's not important, but because that wasn't the orientation. So that what has happened is that those women who are receiving personal attention in the hospital are saying this is wonderful, and those women who are not are having very difficult times in the hospital.
Go ahead, please. Hello? Go ahead.
Yes, I want to congratulate you. I think what you're doing is excellent.
Thank you.
I had a baby in Ontario recently. Are either of you familiar with the Le Boyer method?
Yes, we are.
I requested that through a hospital in Ontario and was told and agreed that it would be done for me at my request until the actual birth. I had a natural childbirth, but they didn't go along with the Le Boyer part. And it was all done to suit the hospital's regulations and the doctors.
I'd like to point out, I agree with you. I think that should be available to you. And in fact, in our local area, the Mission Memorial Hospital in the Lower Fraser Valley are in fact doing Le Boyer births. So, it is possible sometimes in hospital to get that.
Well,
what is it? Some of our viewers may not be familiar with what a Le Boyer birth is. Frederick Le Boyer was a French obstetrician who thinks that birth is a traumatic experience for the infant, which it probably is to some extent. And he felt that to minimize the trauma associated with birth, the lighting should be low, it should be very quiet in the delivery room, and the baby should be put in a warm bath where it's allowed to relax and unfold and recover from its experience before, and then it's put on the mother's tummy to nurse.
Would you do that as a midwife also?
If the parents desire it.
Pardon?
If the parents desire the bath, it certainly, but the rest of it is routine.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, I just have one question. I was wondering if midwifery here or anywhere, like in Britain or whatever, has any training concerning life at the other end of the spectrum, you know, like death, or is it only concerned with birth?
Do you mean death that is occurring at the time of birth?
No, at the other end of life spectrum, ma'am.
Then perhaps Karen could speak to that.
It's one of the things I think that midwives have had to become aware of because, of course, we associate death with the other end of life, but death does occur around childbirth too, occasionally. And midwives have, when I was in England doing my training, have had to become aware of how to deal with death so that we can better support families that lose babies. Go ahead, please.
Hello? Yes, hello. Please go ahead.
I would like to say that I've had a birth with a midwife in England in a nursing home, and it was the most pleasant one of all my children. She gave me tremendous support, and she was with me all the time.
Yes, thank you very much for calling.
Go ahead, please.
Hello. I'm
Hello?
not used to this. This is my first round on the phone.
Neither are we.
Neither are we.
I had 3 kids, and my first one was 7-13, and she was a girl, and she was small. My second one was 10-14, and carrying it, I tried to tell the doctor that, God, it's up around my tits. I mean, excuse me, you know.
Jack is embarrassed.
Choking, you know, when I was eating and stuff because I felt so cramped, and he didn't listen. And so when the baby was born, he had broad shoulders, thank goodness, because if his head had been too big, I would have really been a wreck.
So you had a tough time.
Yeah, they didn't listen. I tried to tell them, you know, because the unknown scares the hell out of me.
Well, we do know a lot about what's happening in our bodies, and I think it would be good to improve the communications.
Go ahead, please.
I was wondering if there's any emotional difference for the baby being born at the home or rather than the hospital and the sanitary situation and all that, you know?
There is no way that we have any way of testing. What we can clearly see is that it must be a different experience for a baby to spend its first day with its mother all cuddled up in bed and nursing when it desires, than to spend its first 24 hours in a nursery being given attention routinely and being brought to its mother on a modified hospital schedule. There must be some qualitative difference. And I know from my second birth with my little boy that I watched him as he kind of redid that birth experience. And I could see him kind of whimper, and I would soothe him, and he'd relax. And I really felt a grief for my little girl who was born in the hospital, that we had not had that time together.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'd just like to say that I agree with what you're saying. Only regret I have is it would be too late for me. I've had 4 children, the last one just this last year, and I'd give anything to be able to have my children at home, in a warm environment at home, especially the last 3, because the older children are always interested in the birth of their new brother or sister.
Mm-hmm.
They'd have been there right afterwards. They had just given anything for it. They were so excited about the new brother and sister that was coming along.
Marvelous. Thanks for calling.
Please go ahead.
Hello. I think that by having a baby at home would be a beautiful experience, but what I'm curious about is I was pushing for 2 hours in the delivery of my baby, and all of a sudden they were monitoring the heartbeat, and the heartbeat dropped, and they said I had to have a forceps delivery, and they wheeled me in, and 13 minutes later the baby was born, and I'm under the understanding that if the child had been pulled out, that she would have had brain damage. Is there anything that would let me know, like, say, if I had a baby at home, that something like that could have been helped, or...
Well, the one thing that we do know is that births that occur at home, there is less need for intervention. Not only do babies receive less intervention, but they in fact require less. Perhaps Karen could best answer this question.
And perhaps that may be due in part to the fact that women are usually more relaxed at home. And that's possibly because the hospital is an alien environment. Let's face it, it's a place we go when we're sick, when we're injured, when we're diseased. And my experience is that women are more relaxed at home. Also, at home, there are more alternatives. We can get women up, we can lock them.
Okay. Thank you very much, girls. You were magnificent. Louise Mangan and Karen May of the Maternal Health Society.
Thank you, Jack.
We'll give you an address, perhaps after the break. Station G, Vancouver. You can't do that now, can you?
30 seconds, Michelle. Up.
Oh, we can do... I don't think we can do it. We can't get it up.
What we'll do is we'll refer people to...
We'll refer people to it when they're phone. Don't go for a minute or two, girls.
David Stafford and at Van Amerongen.
30 seconds coming back.
And he's a tough guy, but one of these people who's scared witless. Did you ever see two such naturals as Karen and Louise and Midwifery?
Very good.
Box 46563, Station G, Vancouver, Monday.
Monday we have two authors, a fellow by the name of David Stafford.
Spies.
And Richard Gordon.
Carry on, nurse.
That's
doctor.
Right. Doctor in
and
the
then
House
I've got
series.
something else too. The tragic story.
Very
nothing
sad.
but tragic stories these days. Best of Webster, Sunday night, 6:30.
That's right.
Let's have a good weekend, will you?
I will, you too.
They were very impressed with the two gals from the Maternal Health Society. 9 a.m. precisely, Monday. How did you like the letter from Scotland?
Very funny.
Oh, flower of Scotland. Can you sing it?
No, I don't even know the song.
Hum it now. Sing about it.
I don't know the song.
I never had
It's your
this.
song.
It's not my song. I don't like these Scotch songs anyway. I don't play records, and if I had a turntable, I wouldn't play Old Flower of Scotland for the Queen herself. But I can't how many bars of Old Flower of Scotland. I go through the world spreading sweetness, light, charm, happiness, tolerance, good humor, arrogance, boorishness, and rudeness.